The Cheers to That podcast, proudly brought to you by drinklab.org.
All right, time to dust off those cocktail shakers, folks. We're diving deep today. And this one's got a twist. We're tackling a drink with, well, a bit of a double identity. Two names, both pretty unforgettable, and we're going to mix up the recipe breakdown with, hopefully, some of the story behind those names. You game.
It really is wild, how something as simple as a drink, a recipe, can turn into this whole journey through, cultures and history, maybe even a dash of controversy for good measure.
You got that right. So the star of the show today is our mystery cocktail going by both Buttery Nipple and, wait for it, Cocksucking Cowboy. What do you make of that?
See, that's what hooks me right away. Makes you wonder, is it just a regional thing? Or does one name have a more, shall we say, colorful past than the other?
Ooh, I like the way you think. But before we get lost in the name game, let's break down what's actually in this intriguingly named drink. And get this, it's surprisingly simple. Both of our Drink Lab recipes, no matter the name, they agree on the core ingredients: butterscotch schnapps and Irish cream.
Two ingredients that just, naturally go together, right?
Okay.
Though, here's a little curveball. Our sources mention the ratios are slightly different between the two. Sounds like the Buttery Nipple leans a bit heavier on the butterscotch schnapps, while the Cocksucking Cowboy goes a little heavier on the Irish cream.
Okay, so maybe there's more to this than just two names for the same drink. Even with something this simple, seems like there's room for people to have their own spin, their own regional twist, right? You got me thinking now I want to do a blind taste test. See if I can guess which name matches which ratio,
Now you're speaking my language. But hold on, before we get too far ahead, there's something else. They both talk about how the drink looks. Apparently, getting that perfect layer, the Irish cream floating on top of the butterscotch schnapps, that's key.
Oh, I can picture it, like a tiny masterpiece in your glass. And for such an easy drink to make, that visual, it adds a touch of class, wouldn't you say? Though I gotta wonder, does the name you use change how you see that elegance? Is sipping on a Buttery Nipple different from,
Yeah, you hit on something there. And that brings us right back to the heart of our deep dive today. Why two names, and what do those names tell us? About the drink itself, its history, maybe even the people who enjoy it. It's funny how, just the name of a drink can totally change how you think about it,
Yeah.
And it seems like our sources agree the Buttery Nipple was the more common name overall. But then our more interesting name, that one pops up more in Australia.
Right. And Drink Lab even calls the Cocksucking Cowboy name, quote, bold. Which, knowing Australia, it kind of fits, right? They're not exactly known for being shy about strong language.
Yeah, for sure. It says a lot about different cultures,
Yeah.
What's funny, it's different everywhere. What might make someone blush over here could be, nothing somewhere else.
It's like that time I tried to order a black and tan in Ireland, actually. Let's just say the bartender was not having it. Gave me this whole impromptu history lesson about why that name is not cool over there. Who knew a drink order could be such a history lesson?
It shows how, even with drinks, these names can have, a whole hidden history behind them. Stuff you might not even realize. It's like this extra layer to the whole experience.
Imagine ordering a cocksucking cowboy with your grandma. Right, maybe not the best bonding moment. But speaking of that name, our encyclopedia entry actually mentions, in Australia, you can buy pre-made shots, commercially sold, and they're called CS Cowboy. Even shortened it.
That is interesting. Really shows the Cocksucking Cowboy name. It's got a strong hold in Australia. It's not just slang, it's officially a thing over there.
Makes you wonder, did the drink even start in Australia? Or did the name just, for whatever reason, catch on there? And how did it end up with two such totally different names to begin with?
Good questions. Sadly, our sources don't go that deep into the drink's origin story. But they're acknowledging that Cocksucking Cowboy name is popular in Australia, but also, not alienating anyone who might find the other name a bit easier to swallow.
It's a tough balance, for sure. Trying to be inclusive, give information, but also, not step on anyone's toes culturally. This whole name thing, it really got me thinking, are there other drinks out there with, aliases? Depending on where you are in the world, it'd be like a secret cocktail club with different passwords, right?
Oh, totally. The cocktail world is full of these little regional quirks, different names for the same things. You can trace the history of a drink just by seeing what people call it. Pretty cool.
Right, like that game, Telephone, but with cocktails. And hey, speaking of ingredients with stories, what about our two main players in the Buttery Nipple or Cocksucking Cowboy saga, butterscotch schnapps, and Irish cream. I feel like this has been around forever.
Yeah, they have that classic cocktail vibe for sure.
Now I'm really curious. Was there, like, a butterscotch schnapps craze back in the day? Did some genius bartender pair it with Irish cream for the first time and change everything? So many questions.
Why does Australia get to claim the name that, well, let's be honest, most folks would shy away from?
Australia's got a reputation for that colorful language, right? And it's not just for the shock value, it's ingrained in their history. Think about it. Convict origins. Slang becomes a way to build camaraderie, a secret language for the outsiders.
So pushing boundaries with language, especially around drinks, it's kind of in their DNA. That's wild. But still doesn't explain the cocksucking cowboy part.
That's where it gets really interesting. To understand that, gotta look at how Australia sees itself, that whole rugged masculine ideal the cowboy represents.
Okay, detective hats on then. Let's break this down, starting with Buttery Nipple. That one's kind of on the nose, isn't it? Butterscotch, creamy texture, even looks a bit like, well, you get the idea.
Very literal, right? It's all about the immediate experience of the drink. No mystery there. But then you've got its Wild West cousin, and that's where things get head-scratchy. Why cowboy at all? It's not like this shot's got saloon doors swinging open when you drink it.
Yeah, why cowboy of all things? Yeah. Especially for a country known for, well, being rugged and outdoorsy. It's like a puzzle with a missing piece or something.
It's that contrast, isn't it? You've got the classic cowboy image, tough, independent, all that. Then you slap cocksucking on it. Suddenly, it's not so straightforward. Australia loves its tough guy image. We've seen it in movies, ads, everywhere.
And this drink's name is like a wink and a nudge to that. Like they're in on the joke about their own identity or something.
It's poking fun at that over-the-top masculinity a little bit. Like, yeah, we're tough, but we don't take ourselves too seriously, even when it comes to drinks.
I kind of love that. It's bold. So are we saying that Cocksucking Cowboy is actually a satire of the Aussie tough guy?
You could definitely see it that way. This whole deep dive just shows how much food and drink say about a culture. Not just what they like to taste, but their values, their humor, even if it's a little off-color for some.
It's really fascinating. And the best part is, even without knowing exactly who coined the phrase cocksucking cowboy, not knowing somehow makes it more interesting.
Totally. It's like we're allowed to keep guessing. Maybe someone out there has a bar napkin with the answer scribbled on it. Until then, we've got a pretty good understanding of why it works, and that's something.
This whole thing, from Buttery Nipple to...
It's amazing what you can unpack from a few ingredients and a catchy name. That's what makes these deep dives so fun.
Couldn't agree more. So, to everyone listening, next time you see a Buttery Nipple or a cocksucking cowboy, we're not judging. Take a second to appreciate the story behind it.
Cheers to that. And hey, if you're mixing up drinks, don't be afraid to get creative with the name. You might just invent the next cultural icon. You never know.
Makes you think every drink has a story behind it if you look close enough, huh?
You got it. And sometimes it's more about the people drinking it than the drink itself. Like, we're always looking for those big reveals, the aha moments.
Right.
But half the time, it's the searching that's the fun part.
Totally. We might never know exactly how the cocksucking cowboy was born.
Right.
But we sure learned a lot about what makes it so interesting along the way.
See? And hey, maybe you'll stumble across some old Aussie bartender's diary someday with the whole story in it. Wouldn't that be something?
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, and cheers.
If you want to make a cocksucking cowboy, get the recipe at drinklab.org.